When my son told me to find somewhere else to die, you're useless now. I packed my bags like the dutiful father I'd always been. 3 days later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, discovering that my supposedly loyal wife had been playing the longest game of chess in history. Nathan was about to learn that sometimes the pawn becomes the king. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me tell you how I went from homeless widower to the man holding all the cards. Because, friend, this story has more twists than a roller coaster at Coney Island. 2 months ago, I was Harold Bennett, devoted husband of 40 years and father to one spectacularly ungrateful son. When Clara died of a heart attack at 69, I thought my world was ending. Nathan swooped in during my grief like a hawk in an expensive suit, clucking about how difficult this must be for me. Dad, you can't possibly manage this big house alone, he'd said, his voice dripping with false concern. The stairs, the maintenance, all those memories. It's not healthy. I should have seen the calculation behind his kindness. Nathan had always been Clara's golden boy, the one who could do no wrong. When he married that high-flying corporate attorney, Amelia, and started producing grandchildren, Clara doted on them all. Meanwhile, I was just the man who worked, paid the bills, and kept everything afloat. After the funeral, Nathan became increasingly insistent about my situation. He'd bring Amelia over for Sunday dinners where they'd corner me with glossy brochures of lifestyle communities and senior living resorts. Dad, these places are wonderful. You'd have people your own age, activities, no responsibilities. What they meant was no inheritance to split, no inconvenient father to handle. The final blow came last Tuesday. I'd been living in what Nathan now called our house for 6 weeks since Clara's death. Still sleeping in the guest room because I couldn't bear to pack up our bedroom. Nathan arrived unannounced with Amelia and 2 oversized suitcases. Dad, we've made a decision, he said briskly. Amelia's been offered a partnership downtown and we need to move into the city immediately. This house is perfect for us. I stared at him, not quite comprehending. Move in. But this is my home. Nathan's mask slipped for just a second, revealing the cold calculation beneath. Actually, Dad, according to Mom's will, I inherited everything. The house, the accounts, all of it. I've been letting you stay here out of kindness, but it's time for you to find your own place. The words hit me like a blow. Nathan, surely there's been some mistake. No mistake, he replied flatly. Mom knew I'd take better care of her legacy than you ever could. You never understood investments. You were just the husband. Just the husband. 40 years reduced to 3 words. That's when he delivered the killing blow. Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now. I packed my things in a day. 40 years of marriage fit into 2 suitcases and a small box of photos. Nathan watched from the doorway, checking his watch like I was making him late for something important. There's a nice retirement complex on Cedar Lane, he offered with the enthusiasm of someone recommending a coffee shop. Very affordable. I'm sure they have openings. Affordable. My son was inheriting $33 million and suggesting I check into what was essentially a welfare facility for the elderly. Amelia loaded my suitcases into their Lexus with the efficiency of someone taking out the trash. Harold, you'll love having your independence again, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. No more worrying about maintenance or taxes. No more home. She meant, as we drove away, I watched my house, Clara's house, Nathan's house now disappear in the rearview mirror. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 4 decades making that house a home, hosting Nathan's birthday parties, nursing Clara through her illnesses, tending to every detail she cared about. Now I was being driven to a budget motel like an unwelcome guest who'd overstayed my welcome. The Willow Creek Inn was exactly what you'd expect from a place charging $52 a night, thinner towels, and a carpet that had seen far better decades. Nathan handed me $200 in cash as if he were tipping a hotel maid. This should cover you for a few days while you get settled. He said, I'll have Amelia transfer some money into your account once we go through Mom's paperwork. Some money from my own inheritance. After they left, I sat on the sagging mattress and tried to process what had just happened. In the span of 3 hours, I had gone from grieving widower to homeless senior citizen. The son I had raised, loved, and sacrificed for had discarded me like an expired prescription. But as I sat there in that depressing motel room, a thought began to gnaw at me. Clara had always been meticulous about her affairs, obsessively organized about important documents. She'd shown me the will years ago, explaining her wishes, making sure I understood everything, and I was certain that wasn't what it had said. Clara had been many things, sometimes stubborn, occasionally patronizing about finances, but she wasn't cruel. The The woman who'd held my hand through my father's death, who'd surprised me with flowers every anniversary, wouldn't have left me destitute. The next morning, I used the motel's Wi-Fi to search for Clara's attorney, Leonard Harrington, the same lawyer who had handled our house purchase and various business matters over the years. His office was downtown, a 25-minute bus ride that cost me precious cash but felt necessary. Leonard Harrington was a distinguished man in his 70s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. When his secretary announced that Mr. Bennett was there about his wife's estate, he looked genuinely surprised. "Harold, my dear, I was wondering when you'd come in," he said warmly. "I tried calling your house several times," Leonard said softly, "but Nathan told me you were traveling. That's what my son had told him." "Mr. Harrington," I said, my voice trembling, "I need to ask you about Clara's will." He looked puzzled. "Of course. Didn't Nathan provide you with your copy?" I gave him the original and several copies after the reading. My stomach dropped. There was a reading. "Harold, you were supposed to be there. Nathan said you were too distraught and that he'd handle everything and make sure you received your inheritance." The blood drained from my face as the reality hit me. "Mr. Harrington, I was never told about any reading. Nathan told me he inherited everything." Leonard Harrington's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. He reached for a thick file folder, his movements suddenly urgent. "Harold, that's impossible. Your wife's will is very specific about your inheritance." He pulled out a document. I recognized Clara's neat signature at the bottom, witnessed and notarized. But as Leonard began reading, I realized Nathan had lied about everything. "Clara Evelyn Bennett, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath to my beloved husband, Harold Thomas Bennett, the following. Our primary residence at 614 Pinecrest Lane, including all furnishings and personal effects. Additionally, I leave him 70% of all financial assets, investments, and accounts totaling approximately $23 million. My head started spinning. $23 million. The house, 70% of everything. Leonard's voice grew more serious as he continued. To my son, Nathan Bennett, I leave $10 million to be held in trust with distributions beginning on his 45th birthday. Contingent upon his treatment of his father following my death, contingent upon his treatment of me. Clara had known, somehow, she'd known exactly what Nathan would try to do. "Mr. Harrington," I whispered, "Nathan told me I inherited nothing. He moved into my house. He gave me $200 and suggested I find a retirement facility." The elderly lawyer's face flushed with anger. "Harold, what Nathan has done is called elder abuse and fraud. He's committed multiple felonies, but he had legal documents, most likely forged, or perhaps drafts from an earlier version of the will. Your wife updated her will 6 months before her death, specifically because she was concerned about Nathan's attitude toward money and his sense of entitlement." The room spun. All those times Nathan had dismissed my opinions, talked over me during family dinners, rolled his eyes when I tried to contribute to conversations about their lavish vacations or Amelia's business deals. Clara had been watching, evaluating, making decisions. "There's more, Harold. The trust provision for Nathan specifically states that if he fails to treat you with respect and dignity following my death, the entire $10 million reverts to you instead." I stared at him in shock. "Are you saying your son just cost himself $10 million? "Exactly," Leonard said. "His inheritance is now yours as well. You're not inheriting $23 million, Harold. You're inheriting $33 million plus the house and all personal property." The irony was delicious. Nathan had been so eager to claim his inheritance that he triggered the exact clause designed to protect me from his greed. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Leonard smiled. And for the first time since Clara's death, I felt genuine warmth directed at me. "Now, my dear, we call the police about the fraud. Then we call Nathan and inform him that he's about to receive the shock of his life. Can he fight this? With what money? He's about to discover that every account he thought he controlled actually belongs to you. Every investment, every bank account, every asset tech, your house is frozen pending investigation of his fraudulent activities." I thought about Nathan in my house, probably already planning renovations, shopping for new furniture with money he thought was his. Amelia was probably calculating how the inheritance would fit neatly into her law firm's investments. They had no idea that in about 6 hours, their entire world was going to implode. Leonard Harrington's office became command central for what he cheerfully called Operation Justice. He contacted the police, the banks, and a private investigator while I sat in his leather chair, still processing the magnitude of Nathan's deception. The forged documents are quite sophisticated. Detective Morales explained as she reviewed the fake will Nathan had shown me. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment crime. Someone planned this carefully. You think Nathan had help? I asked. Almost certainly. Creating convincing legal forgeries requires specific knowledge and connections. We'll need to investigate whether Amelia or someone in her professional network was involved. Within 2 hours, every account had been frozen. Nathan's credit cards linked to what he thought were his new inheritance accounts were declined. The house utilities, which he had already transferred into his name, were suspended pending ownership verification. My phone rang at exactly 3:47 p.m. Nathan's name flashed on the screen. Dad, where are you? There's some kind of mix-up with the bank accounts. They're saying Mom's assets are frozen. Hello, Nathan. I'm sitting in Leonard Harrington's office. You remember him? Mom's attorney? The one who read the real will to an empty room while you told him I was traveling. Silence. Then, Dad. I don't know what you think you discovered. I discovered that you're a liar and a thief. And sweetheart, I also discovered that your mother was much smarter than either of us realized. You don't understand. I was protecting you from the complexity of managing all that money. You've never had to deal with investments. Oh, I understand perfectly. I said evenly. You forged legal documents, committed fraud, and threw your 67-year-old father out of his own house because you thought I was too stupid to notice. His voice turned sharp, desperate. Dad, you're confused. The grief has been overwhelming, and someone is obviously taking advantage of your emotional state. The audacity was breathtaking. Even caught red-handed, Nathan was still trying to manipulate me. Nathan, dear, I said calmly, let me clarify something for you. Not only did you never inherit anything, but your actual inheritance, the $10 million your mother left you, as now mine as well. Thanks to a lovely clause she included about treating me with dignity and respect. That's impossible. Detective Morales is sitting right here. If you'd like to discuss the impossibility of fraud charges with her. The phone went quiet. I could almost hear Nathan's mind racing, calculating, searching for an angle. Dad, please, can we meet somewhere and talk about this reasonably? I'm sure we can work something out. Oh, we'll definitely be meeting soon at the courthouse when you're arraigned. You wouldn't dare press charges against your own son. Something cold and final crystallized in my chest. Watch me. I hung up and looked at Leonard, who was beaming with approval. How long before he's arrested? Detective Morales has enough evidence for a warrant. They'll pick him up this evening. And Amelia? Her financial records are being subpoenaed. If she participated in creating those documents, she faced charges too. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Dad, please don't do this. Think about the grandchildren. I showed the message to Detective Morales, who smiled grimly. Emotional manipulation, classic behavior pattern for this type of crime. I typed back, I'm thinking about them. They deserve to see what happens when you steal from family. 20 minutes later, Amelia called. Harold, surely we can resolve this privately. Nathan made some poor decisions, but involving the police seemed excessive. Amelia, did you help him forge those documents? I asked. That's not fair. Harold, you have to understand the pressure Nathan was under. He was worried about your mental state, your ability to handle large sums of money. So that's a yes. It wasn't malicious. He genuinely believed he was protecting you by throwing me out of my house and telling me to find somewhere to die. Amelia was quiet. Amelia, here's what's going to happen. You're both going to be arrested. You're both going to face federal fraud charges. And I'm going to be sitting in my house, watching it all unfold. Harold, please be reasonable. I was reasonable for 40 years. Didn't work out well for me. The police arrested Nathan at 8:30 p.m. while he was having dinner at the Willow Creek Inn, apparently celebrating his inheritance with Amelia and another couple. According to Detective Morales, he screamed about false arrest and demanded to call his lawyer, who turned out to be Amelia's old college friend with zero criminal law experience. Amelia was arrested at her law office the next morning. The forensic accountant had traced the forged documents to a printing company her firm used for creating fraudulent investment Apparently, my son had quite the criminal resume that Nathan either didn't know about or chose to ignore. I spent my first night back in my house in 40 years. Sleeping in the master bedroom, Nathan had already moved his belongings into the space, replacing Clara's careful organization with his chaos of designer clothes and expensive gadgets. I packed everything into garbage bags and left them on the front porch. Let him collect them when he makes bail. The house felt different now, not because Clara was gone, but because I was finally seeing it as mine. For decades, I had maintained it as Clara's sanctuary, designed around her preferences, her needs, her vision of how we should live. Now, looking around with clear eyes, I realized how little of me had ever been reflected in these rooms. That was about to change. Leonard Harrington called around noon with updates. Nathan's bail is set at $50,000. Since all his accounts are frozen, he'll have to find someone else to cover it. What about Amelia? I asked. $200,000. Apparently, the judge wasn't impressed with her history of financial misconduct. Who knew my son had been under investigation for securities fraud? I certainly hadn't, but then again, I'd been excluded from most family financial discussions. Nathan and Amelia had always spoken to me like I was a child when money came up, simplifying concepts they assumed I couldn't understand. They were about to learn how much I actually did understand. Leonard, I said, I want to make some changes to the house. Nathan had contractors lined up to renovate. I'd like to proceed with some of those plans, but with my own vision. Excellent idea. It's your home now, Harold. Do whatever makes you happy. What made me happy, I realized, was the idea of undoing every assumption Nathan had made about my inheritance. He had planned to gut the kitchen, replace the hardwood floors, and convert Clara's study into a wine cellar. I was going to turn the study into an art studio and repurpose the wine cellar plans into a library. My phone rang. Unknown number, Mr. Bennett. This is Janet Cooper from Channel 7 News. We understand you were the victim of a significant elder fraud case involving your son. Would you be willing to share your story? Word was getting out in a city this size. The arrest of a prominent attorney and his wife for defrauding their elderly father-in-law was news. Miss Cooper, I appreciate your interest, but I'm not ready to make public statements, I said. I understand this must be difficult, but your story could help. Other seniors recognize warning signs of family financial abuse. She had a point. Many other men my age were being manipulated by adult children who saw them as inconvenient obstacles to inheritance. If I decided to tell my story, would I have control over how it was presented? Absolutely. We could arrange a sit-down interview where I'd have approval over the final edit. I thought about Nathan, probably sitting in a jail cell right now, still believing this was all a misunderstanding he could charm his way out of. Miss Cooper, let me get back to you. I might have quite a story to tell. After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of the expensive wine Amelia had sent us for Christmas. A wine I was apparently now drinking in my own house, purchased with my own money while contemplating whether to publicly humiliate my son on television. Life had certainly taken an interesting turn. The doorbell rang at 7 a.m. sharp. Through the window, I could see Nathan on my front porch wearing yesterday's clothes and looking like he'd aged 5 years overnight. He'd made bail somehow. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Dad, please. We need to talk. We talked yesterday. You told me to find somewhere to die. I found somewhere to live instead. Nathan's eyes were red-rimmed. His usual perfect composure completely shattered. I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But I'm still your son. Are you? I asked coldly. Because sons don't typically forge legal documents to steal their father's inheritance. I wasn't stealing, he said. He stopped, clearly struggling to find words that didn't sound criminal. You were what, Nathan? I was trying to protect you from making poor financial decisions. You've never managed large amounts of money. Even now, even after being arrested for fraud, he couldn't admit the truth. In Nathan's mind, he was still the victim of my unreasonable expectations. Nathan, let me share something your mother told me 6 months before she died. She said she was worried about your sense of entitlement, your attitude toward money, and how you treated people you considered beneath you. His face went pale. Mom never said that. She did, I replied quietly. She told me you reminded her of her brother, Damien. Handsome, charismatic, and completely incapable of thinking about anyone but yourself. She told me she was changing the will specifically because she was afraid of what you'd do to me if you had control. That's a lie. I pulled out my phone and showed him a voice recording. Actually, it's not. Your mother recorded a video, message explaining her decision to be played. If you ever contested the will, or if you treated me poorly after her death, Nathan stared at the phone like it was a poisonous snake. She knew, son, she knew exactly who you were underneath all that charm. The only thing she didn't predict was how far you'd actually go. Play it, he whispered. I touched the screen and Amelia's voice filled the morning air. Clear, measured, and absolutely devastating if you're hearing this. Nathan, it means my fears about your character were justified. I hoped I was wrong. I hoped my son had more integrity than I suspected. But if your father is playing this recording, it means you've proven me right in the worst possible way. Nathan sank onto the porch steps as Amelia's voice continued. I spent 43 years watching your father sacrifice his dreams, his ambitions, his independence to take care of our family. He worked part-time jobs to help pay for your education while I built my practice. He postponed his own education, gave up career opportunities, and poured himself into being the husband and father he thought we needed. The recording continued for 3 more minutes, each word carefully chosen, each sentence a scalpel cutting through Nathan's justifications and self-deceptions. By the time you hear this, you'll have discovered that treating your father poorly has cost you everything. I hope it was worth it. When it ended, Nathan was crying, not the pretty tears he'd used to manipulate people since childhood, but ugly, broken sobs. He hated me. He whispered, no, Nathan. He loved you enough to hope you'd prove him wrong. You chose to prove him right instead. He looked up at me, mascara-streaked cheeks replaced by tears now streaming down his face. What happens now? Now you face the consequences of your choices. The fraud charges, the investigation, the public humiliation when this story hits the news. The news? Channel 7 wants to interview me about elder financial abuse. I'm thinking of saying yes, I said. Nathan's face crumpled completely. Dad, please think about what this will do to the grandchildren, to Amelia's career, to our whole family. I am thinking about it. I'm thinking about how you didn't consider any of those things when you decided to commit multiple felonies. He stood up slowly, looking older and more defeated than I'd ever seen him. I know you won't believe this, but I never meant for it to go this far. I wanted the money. I wanted the security, the status. I wanted to never have to worry about anything again. For the first time since this nightmare began, Nathan was telling the truth. I believe you, son, but wanting something doesn't justify destroying people to get it. He nodded, tears still flowing. What can I do to fix this? You can start by admitting what you did was wrong. Not misguided, not protective, not complicated. It was wrong. Completely, unforgivably wrong. And then you can face whatever consequences come next with some dignity. Instead of trying to manipulate your way out of them, Nathan looked at me for a long moment, seeing perhaps for the first time not the pushover father he'd always known, but the man who had outmaneuvered him completely. I deserved this, didn't I? Yes, Nate. You absolutely did. 3 days after Nathan's porch confession, Amelia showed up at my door. Amelia Bennett was everything I'd expected, perfectly coiffed, dripping with jewelry, and radiating the kind of entitlement that only comes from 3 generations of inherited wealth. Harold, we need to discuss this situation rationally, she said. I invited her in, curious to see what version of reality the Bennett family had constructed to explain their son's felony charges. Amelia settled herself in my living room as if she were granting me an audience. Nathan made some poor choices, obviously, but prosecuting him seems rather vindictive, don't you think? Vindictive? I said sharply. Your son helped steal my inheritance and threw me out of my own house. Nathan was following Amelia's lead. He didn't understand the full situation. The woman was actually trying to blame my son for her daughter's criminal behavior. I had to admire the audacity. Mrs. Bennett, I said, Nathan created forged legal documents. That's not following someone's lead. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. Nathan's lawyer believes we can reach a settlement that benefits everyone. She continued, you get your house back. Amelia faces appropriate consequences, and Nathan avoids the publicity of a trial. Appropriate consequences, as if Amelia's crimes were a minor etiquette violation. What kind of settlement? Amelia smiled, clearly believing she'd found an opening. Nathan's family is prepared to compensate you for your inconvenience. Let's say $2 million in exchange for dropping the charges against him. $2 million to forgive the man who'd helped steal $33 million from me, Mrs. Bennett. Your son participated in a scheme that cost me everything I owned. You think $2 million covers that? Harold, be realistic. Nathan has a career, children, a reputation to maintain. Sending him to prison serves no one. It serves justice. Amelia's polished facade cracked slightly. Justice. You're destroying multiple families over money you'd never have known how to manage anyway. There it was, the same condescending attitude that had poisoned my relationship with Nathan. In their world, I was just the help who'd gotten up. Mrs. Bennett, I think we're done here, I said firmly. Harold, please reconsider. $5 million final offer. $5 million to let Nathan walk free. The amount was staggering, but the principle was non-negotiable. My answer is no. Amelia stood, her composure completely restored. Very well. but you should know that Nathan's legal team has found some interesting information about your father's business practices. It would be unfortunate if that became public during the trial. The threat was clear, but I felt no fear, only curiosity. What kind of information? The kind that might make you reconsider who the real criminal in this situation was. After she left, I called Leonard immediately. Harold, whatever they think they found, it doesn't change the facts of Nathan and Amelia's crimes. But could it affect the case? Potentially. If they can muddy the waters enough, create doubt about Damien's character or business practices, might influence a jury. I thought about Damien, about our marriage, about all the secrets that might be buried in 43 years of shared life. Leonard, I want to know everything about Damien's business. Every deal, every partnership, every potential irregularity. Harold, are you sure? Sometimes the past is better left alone. The Bennett family is threatening to drag Damien's memory through the mud to protect their criminal son. I'd rather know the truth first. That evening, I sat in Damien's study. My study Nan began going through his files systematically. Damien had been meticulously organized, every document dated and categorized. But as I dug deeper into his business records, I began finding things that didn't quite make sense. Payments to shell companies, consulting fees that seemed excessive, partnerships with firms that appeared to exist only on paper. By midnight, I discovered something that changed everything I thought I knew about my father, the private investigator Leonard recommended was a sharp-eyed woman named Carol Chen, who specialized in financial crimes. She spent 6 hours in Damien's study, photographing documents and building what she called the real picture of my father's business empire. Mr. Bennett, Carol Chen said gently, your father was running a sophisticated money laundering operation through his consulting firm. We're talking about millions of dollars in illegal transactions over the past decade. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. Damien was the most honest man I knew. I'm sorry, she said, but the evidence is overwhelming. He was washing money for organized crime families, using his legitimate business as a front. I stared at the documents spread across Damien's old desk, my desk now. Invoices for services never rendered. Consulting contracts with companies that didn't exist. Payment schedules that corresponded with known criminal activities. How long has this been going on? Based on these records, at least 12 years. Probably longer. 12 years. While I was hosting dinner parties and attending charity galas, my father was facilitating criminal enterprises. Mr. Bennett, there's more. The $10 million Damien left Amelia at, money came directly from laundered funds. If the FBI discovers this, they'll seize everything as proceeds of criminal activity. The room started spinning. Everything, the house, the investments, all of it. Unless what? Carol looked uncomfortable. Unless Amelia and Nathan's legal team already knows about this and is planning to use it as leverage. If they tip off the FBI about your father's crimes, they might be able to negotiate immunity in exchange for cooperation. My daughter and her husband weren't just thieves. They were holding a nuclear weapon over my head. What are my options? Legally, you could contact the FBI yourself, come forward voluntarily, and hope for leniency. You'd lose most of the money, but you might keep the house. And if I don't, then Amelia and Nathan's lawyers will probably leak this information strategically. You'll lose everything anyway, Carol said softly, but you'll also face potential charges for unknowingly benefiting from criminal activity. I thought about Eleanor Drake's smug confidence, her certainty that I'd caved to their settlement offer. They'd known about Damien's crimes all along. Carol, how did they even find out about this? Nathan's an investment banker, she replied. He'd have recognized the patterns in your father's financial records. The question is, what are they planning to do with this information? My phone rang. Amelia's number. Dad, we need to meet tonight. There are things you need to know about Grandpa Damien that change everything. I already know, Amelia. Silence. Then you know what? I know about the money laundering. I know about the criminal connections. I know everything your grandfather left us is tainted. Dad, listen to me carefully. Nathan's lawyers have been in contact with the FBI. They're willing to let us renegotiate our situation. What kind of renegotiation? Nathan gets immunity in exchange for providing information about Grandpa's criminal network. You get to keep $5 million and the house. The rest goes to the government, and the fraud charges disappear. We all walk away from this mess. It was brilliant in a sociopathic way. Amelia had turned my moral victory into her strategic advantage. Amelia, you're asking me to help you profit from your crimes by exploiting Grandpa Damien's crimes. I'm asking you to be practical. The alternative is losing everything and potentially facing charges yourself. I looked around Damien's study, seeing it clearly for the first time. The expensive furniture, the rare books, the art collection, all of it purchased with blood money. I need time to think. Dad, the FBI meeting is tomorrow morning. Nathan's lawyer needs an answer tonight. After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of Damien's study, surrounded by the evidence of his double life. 43 years of family loyalty to a stranger, and a daughter who'd inherited far more than money from her grandfather. She'd inherited his talent for deception. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated who I was when my back was against the wall. I picked up the phone and dialed Carol Chen. Carol, how quickly can you get me a meeting with the FBI? I have a story to tell them, and I think they're going to find it very interesting. FBI agent Sarah Martinez looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for a federal investigator, intelligent and completely immune to charm. She sat across from me in Leonard's conference room, recording our conversation and taking notes with mechanical precision. Mr. Bennett, she began, you understand that by coming forward voluntarily, you're potentially admitting to benefiting from criminal proceeds. I understand, I said, but I'd rather tell you the truth than let my daughter and her husband manipulate this situation to their advantage. I laid out everything: Damien's hidden business, Nathan's fraud scheme, Amelia's forgeries, and the extortion attempt masquerading as a settlement. Offer your daughter believes she can trade information about your father's crimes for immunity from her own charges. That's exactly what she believes, I said, and she thinks I'll cooperate because I'm afraid of losing everything. Agent Martinez smiled for the first time. Are you afraid, Mr. Bennett? Agent Martinez, 2 weeks ago, I was a grieving widower sleeping in a budget motel. Today, I'm sitting here voluntarily confessing to federal agents about my deceased father's criminal enterprise. Fear is no longer my primary emotion. What is it then? She asked. Pure crystallized anger at being manipulated by people who underestimated my intelligence for decades. Agent Martinez's smile widened. Mrs. Bennett, would you be willing to wear a wire? 3 hours later, I was sitting in my living room with a recording device taped to my chest, waiting for Amelia and Nathan to arrive for what they thought was a surrender meeting. They knocked at exactly 8 p.m., both dressed like they were attending a business dinner. Nathan carried a briefcase that probably contained immunity agreements and settlement papers. Dad, you look better than you have in weeks, Amelia said, kissing my cheek like nothing had happened. I feel better, I replied. Clarity has that effect. Nathan opened his briefcase with the efficiency of someone who'd conducted similar negotiations before. Mr. Bennett, our lawyers have structured this very favorably for you. You retain the house, $5 million in clean assets, and complete immunity from any charges related to Damien's activities. Clean assets, that's an interesting phrase. I said. Amelia shot Nathan a warning look. The important thing is that we're all protected. The past stays buried and we all move forward. What about the $33 million Damien actually left me? Dad, that money is tainted. It can't be separated from his criminal activities. Taking $5 million is the best outcome possible. And you too. What do you get out of this arrangement? Nathan leaned forward, his confidence returning. We get to put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind us. Amelia's charges disappear, my reputation remains intact, and our family can heal. Misunderstanding. He was still calling felony fraud a misunderstanding. Nathan, help me understand something. When exactly did you discover Damien's criminal activities? What do you mean? I mean, did you know about the money laundering when you married my daughter? Or did you discover it recently while you were planning to steal my inheritance? Amelia and Nathan exchanged glances. Mr. Bennett, I don't think that's relevant to our current discussion. Actually, I think it's very relevant because if you knew about Damien's crimes and said nothing, that makes you an accessory after the fact. And if you only discovered them while committing your own crimes, that makes you remarkably unlucky. Amelia's composure was starting to crack. Mom, what are you getting at? Victoria's voice trembled, all the practiced confidence gone. I'm getting at the fact that you two have been planning this for months, possibly years. The forged will, the sudden discovery of the money laundering, even Kevin's convenient connections to document forgers. None of this was spontaneous. That's ridiculous. Is it? Agent Martinez finds it quite plausible. The color drained from both their faces. Agent Martinez, Kevin whispered. FBI, I said evenly. She's been very interested in my story about systematic elder abuse, fraud, and extortion. Particularly the part where you tried to blackmail me with my dead husband's crimes. Kevin stood abruptly, reaching for his briefcase. Margaret, this conversation is over. Actually, Kevin, I said, I think it's just beginning. The door to the hallway opened, and Agent Martinez entered with 2 other federal agents. Their expressions calm, but their movements efficient. Good evening, Martinez said. We'll take it from here. The briefcase Kevin had been reaching for was confiscated immediately, along with both their phones. Victoria Sullivan Hayes and Kevin Hayes, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, elder abuse, and attempted extortion of a federal witness. Victoria turned to me with an expression of absolute betrayal. Mom, how could you do this to your own family? The same way you could forge legal documents and steal my inheritance. Sweetheart, except my way is legal. As the agents handcuffed them, Kevin tried one last desperate play. Margaret, you don't understand what you've done. There are people connected to Robert's business who won't appreciate federal attention. You've put yourself in danger. Agent Martinez paused mid-Miranda, her voice suddenly sharper. Mr. Hayes, are you threatening a federal witness? I'm warning her about the reality of her situation. The reality, Agent Martinez said, is that you just added witness intimidation to your charges after they were removed from the house. Agent Martinez sat back down across from me, her expression thoughtful. Mrs. Sullivan, she said quietly, Kevin's warning might not be entirely empty. Your father was connected to some very dangerous people. Agent Martinez said, how dangerous? I asked, my voice tight. The Torino crime family, primarily. They've been using legitimate businesses to launder money for decades. Your father's consulting firm was one of their most successful operations. The name meant nothing to me, but the agent's expression told me everything I needed to know. Are you saying I'm in actual physical danger? Potentially, she admitted, but there's something else about your father's operation, something that changes everything. Agent Martinez pulled out a thick file folder, the kind that suggested months of painstaking investigation. Mr. Bennett, she said, your father wasn't just laundering money for the Torino family. He was an FBI informant. For 12 years, he provided information about their operations while appearing to facilitate their money laundering. The world tilted sideways. Robert had been working deep undercover for the FBI. His operation was so sensitive that even local field offices weren't informed. He had been helping build cases against multiple crime families, all while keeping up the appearance of a legitimate business. But the money, I whispered, was it real? Yes. The FBI allowed him to keep a percentage of the laundered funds as payment for his cooperation and to maintain his cover. Everything he left you was earned through legitimate federal cooperation. I stared at her, trying to process the revelation. So, the $33 million is legally mine. Exactly, she said. Your father died before the investigation concluded, but his 12 years of cooperation directly led to 47 arrests and the seizure of over $200 million in criminal assets. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because the investigation was ongoing, and because we weren't certain about your involvement or knowledge. Your daughter and son-in-law's fraud scheme actually helped confirm your innocence. Victoria and Nathan hadn't known any of this. They had suspected criminal activity, but they had no idea about your father's federal cooperation. They had been planning to blackmail me with information that would have actually exonerated my husband. The irony was exquisite, almost poetic. Amelia had tried to steal my inheritance twice. First through fraud, then through blackmail based on incomplete knowledge. Agent Martinez, what happens now? I asked. Now. She said, you get your money back. Your daughter and son-in-law face federal charges. And you get to decide what kind of life you want to build with your legitimate inheritance. As for the danger, Nathan mentioned the Torino family will be too busy dealing with their own legal problems to worry about. We're executing search warrants across 3 states tomorrow morning. I looked around my living room, seeing it as the site of my resurrection rather than my humiliation. Agent Martinez, can I ask you something? Of course. In your professional opinion, am I a terrible person for feeling satisfaction about Amelia's arrest? Agent Martinez smiled. Mrs. Bennett, in my professional opinion, you're a woman who refused to be victimized. That's not terrible. That's inspiring. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my renovated house, making coffee for 2. The morning sun streamed through new windows that actually opened properly, illuminating countertops I had chosen myself for the first time in 43 years. Good morning, Margaret. Dr. Sarah Chung Carroll's sister and my new financial advisor appeared in the doorway, carrying a thick folder of investment reports. Good morning, Sarah, Ready for our quarterly review? The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media interviews, and personal transformation. Amelia and Nathan were each serving 18-month federal sentences. The news coverage of their crimes had made me something of a celebrity in senior advocacy circles. Your portfolio is performing excellently, Sarah said, settling at my new breakfast table. The charitable foundation is fully operational, and the scholarship fund has already selected its first recipients. The Margaret Bennett Foundation for Elder Protection had become my primary mission, using $15 million of my inheritance. We were funding legal aid for seniors facing family financial abuse and supporting legislative changes to strengthen elder protection laws. Any word on the documentary? I asked. Netflix had confirmed the production deal. They wanted to start filming next month. My story had captured media attention far beyond the initial news coverage. A Mother's Justice, an American crime story, was being developed as a limited series, with proceeds going to elder advocacy organizations. And Amelia, Sarah's expression grew careful. She's written again. Her lawyer says she wants to apologize and ask for forgiveness. Amelia had written me 17 letters from federal prison. I'd read the first few, ranging from self-justifying to desperate, before deciding to stop opening them. Some relationships, once broken, cannot be repaired with words. Sarah, has my stance on that changed? I asked. Not according to our previous conversations. She said, but people do evolve, Margaret. Even people who've made terrible choices. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, grieving dependent, willing to accept whatever scraps of dignity my family offered me. That woman might have felt obligated to forgive Amelia, to rebuild a relationship out of guilt and tradition. But that woman was gone. Sarah, schedule a meeting with Amelia's lawyer, I said, not to reconcile, but to make something clear. What kind of thing? I want Amelia to understand that her actions had consequences beyond legal punishment. I want her to know she destroyed our relationship permanently, and that her children will grow up knowing why their mother went to prison. That seems harsh, Sarah said. Good, I replied. It's supposed to be harsh. Amelia made adult choices that hurt people she was supposed to love. She doesn't get to escape the emotional consequences just because she wrote some prison letters. Sarah Martinez made notes in her leather portfolio and the grandchildren. She asked. Amelia had requested supervised visits with them. My relationship with her children would be shaped by their own choices as adults, not by their mother's attempts at rehabilitation. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see a delivery truck with a large package. Must be the new furniture for the studio, I said to Sarah. The art studio had been my favorite renovation project. Robert's old den was now a bright, airy space where I was rediscovering my love of painting, something I'd set aside when I married and assumed the role of supporting wife and mother. Margaret, can I ask you something personal? Sarah said, of course. Do you ever regret how this all played out? The prison sentences, the media attention, the permanent family estrangement. I considered her question while signing for my delivery. 6 months ago, I had been invisible, a widow with no money, no home, and no prospects. Today, I was a millionaire philanthropist with a foundation, a documentary deal, and a purpose that extended far beyond my own survival. Sarah, I said, my daughter tried to steal everything I owned and leave me homeless. My son-in-law created forged documents and threatened me with blackmail. They showed me exactly who they were when they thought I was powerless. But they're still family. No, they're still DNA. Family are the people who protect you when you're vulnerable, not the ones who exploit your vulnerability for profit. Sarah closed her portfolio, satisfied with my answer. Besides, I added, look at what I became when I stopped letting them define my worth. After Sarah left, I walked through my house drily. My house now, decorated to my taste, organized around my priorities. In the art studio, I uncovered my latest painting, a self-portrait of a woman standing in bright sunlight. Her face turned boldly toward the future. The woman in the painting looked nothing like the grieving widow who had packed her life into 2 suitcases 6 months ago. This woman looked powerful, independent, unafraid. She looked like someone who had learned that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming everything your enemies never imagined you could be. Outside, the sun was setting behind trees I had planted myself on land that belonged to me, secured through intelligence and courage rather than inherited through marriage or birth. Tomorrow, I would continue building the life I had chosen, rather than the life others had mapped out for me. And if Amelia ever hoped to rebuild a relationship with this woman, She'd need far more than prison letters and empty apologies. She'd need a complete transformation, one that matched the strength and resolve I forged for myself. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.